In this episode, we're going to discuss Trump tariffs. Now, I know there's a lot of media coverage on this already, and everyone's making videos about it, but I want to help you cut through the noise so we can get to the actual details about what is Trump's master plan here. I'm going to share some facts with you to help you understand this situation better and how it affects the world around you and your future. Through research that I did, we're going to dive into Trump's big plan and also discuss US trading history, which will help give some background about what his big plan is here. Now, of course, things are changing rapidly, but giving you this foundation will help you see what the future could look like. So is this all going to work out, or is this going to cause the economy to go into further turmoil? So what is the goal of MAGA and this trade war that's happening and also these tariffs? Let's look at the history to find out. It seems like he wants to bring manufacturing back to how it was in the 1950s. And this is when 28% of US products were made in the US. Currently, it's looking more like 10% of products are made in the US. And during this time, China became a powerhouse in manufacturing goods in the early 2000s. That's when they kind of got their start, and so now it's huge for them. And since then, the global order for the US was in decline. So here's why. First, there was the Bretton Woods system. Now, this system adopted in the US from the 1940s to the 1970s. And during this time with trade and so on, the US was not very flexible with negotiations. US factories during this time were supercharged, and this is because a lot of other countries were underdeveloped or they were in rebels due to the war. So US had a lot of manufacturing. Second, there was Neoliberalism, and that was from the 1980s to about 2016. This system started to open up trade barriers and lower tariffs and have flexible exchange rates. In all, making this easier to produce, import, and export products overseas. Neoliberalism was the point of the US when they were at their richest. But Trump sees this period as deindustrialization. During neoliberalism is when the US dollar became valuable, which is why it was traded internationally and is accepted in many countries today as a form of currency that you can use, because the US had many allies. Many countries in the World Trade Organization had easier access to US goods. This therefore increased the value of the US dollar and kept the US very rich. However, all this made the US very expensive. So this is why companies that are making any products decided to outsource their production. 2018 was the first trade war with China and the US, and China had always tried to leverage higher tariffs over the US. So China had a plan to deal with tariffs that first time around when it happened, and they would end up exporting any of their products to a different country first and then to the US so they could avoid all these tariffs. So after the US wanted to build more factories in 2016, these actually started to get built during 2020. And that happened to work out in perfect timing because of what happened with COVID. But in all, it didn't fully scale as planned. So why is Trump trying to execute this plan again? Let's look at an example of tariffs in action. So let's go back to 2018 when Trump put tariffs on washer machines. So how does this all work? Whenever a country imports a washer machine to the US, they are the ones who are going to have to pay the tariff to the US government. So what if the US products are made locally? Sure, it might be cheaper than importing, say, European washer machines, but what the US would end up doing is just increasing their prices, comparing it to European prices, but just undercutting what they would charge. Nonetheless, the point of this is for consumers to keep buying local products. So sure, this did all create more jobs in the US, but this was no benefit to the consumer because in the end they ended up having to pay a higher price. A similar situation could still happen today. So say if you bought one of these US products, that means you would have still paid a higher price on it overall. As a result, with the tariffs, Biden ended up keeping quite a few of the tariffs that were implemented by Trump for two reasons. Because he found that there was actually a market share for the US by doing this, and it's also hard to get rid of tariffs as well. So what is Trump's plan here? He doesn't necessarily want to put such a high tariff, but he wants countries to negotiate back. And so far, countries are not backing down. The way he sees it is that other countries have put about double the tariffs as he is putting on them. Now, there's an actual equation on this, but this is just vaguely speaking to generalize. Some countries put such a high tariff on the US because they don't want the cultural influence from the Western culture to get involved with theirs, but also for economic factors. So we've seen as far up as 90% tariff on the US in some countries. So point 2, he has stated tariffs as a national emergency. So this is how he was able to fast track these tariffs so quickly on other countries. So point 3, why are the tariffs the highest on China? Because Trump is claiming that it's about the drugs that they're importing, but what I really think it's about is that China is a powerhouse, especially in manufacturing, and this is a threat for Trump. Point number 4, this has caused the stock market to dip. Now, Trump is very aware that it has dipped, and he doesn't care about that because he knows that this is where the rich are going to become richer and the poor are going to start freaking out about what's happening in the market. So they're going to try to back off. So this could be a market manipulation tactic. Point 5, he wants to make more manufacturing plants, but can he do this quickly? Because he is going to need other resources from other countries to build these factories. But he believes this is a good investment as tariff fees will cover the cost later. But keep in mind the first time the manufacturing plants were built, after his presidency, this is when it didn't take off till later in his term. Point 6, he wants a new global world order. So it seems like he wants to go back in history to how it was before. Point 7, he wants to raise more capital by using the gains on tariffs from the US, and this will be to pay for tax cuts and also increase the manufacturing. Point number 8, he wants to increase more jobs. But how is he going to do this if he doesn't have workers? Because he's not really one for immigration. And number 9, he wants to keep the US the #1 powerhouse by keeping the global reserve currency the highest. So what are other countries doing in response to all this? Countries are fighting back with reciprocal tariffs, and they are doing what they can to take everything away from the US. Now, if countries stopped importing products to the US, this would mean less tariffs in the pocket for the US government. Many consumers are revolting by avoiding US products and shopping locally instead. Many countries are wanting to retain the current world order as is because there's a lot of stability in it and it's also what's known. The winners here will be countries that can impose tariffs smartly because this will provide economic growth for them. So what could be the outcome of all this? Now, it's hard to say, but here are some predictions or things that may happen. Consumer prices could be higher overall and result in a recession. So he's heard the complaints about rent being too high and grocery bills being too high, but guess what? This is not going to benefit the lower class as much as it's going to benefit the rich, unless he can somehow build manufacturing plants and have workers available to work in them. When high tariffs are implemented, sales tend to decline. Countries won't want to export it unless they can make a profit on it, and consumers won't want to buy it if they know it's above the market value for what they usually pay for, unless it is something that they need to buy. What about skilled workers? You will need to give visas to these workers so they can work in the US. US manufacturing has been in decline since the 70s, so it will take a long time to bring it back. Also, costs will go up even if it is produced in the US, which is why manufacturing was in decline in the first place. There's an appeal to producing offshore, and that's because you can make a bigger profit. So say Trump got all these manufacturing plants in place. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that they would make any income because companies may not want to buy products because of the tariffs. Now, who is this going to benefit? I would say not really anyone. Except for big businesses, they will most likely be able to stay afloat because they've been through multiple recessions. Who this is going to hurt the most is small businesses and consumers. Less money in the pockets of smaller businesses and more into corporations, creating a monopoly economy, which is why the last video I made is on investing, and this is in pertaining to bigger companies, because this could be an asset for you in this case. Honestly, take your portion while you can. If you don't do something about your own finances, the capitalist system will do something about it for you. Businesses are looking for other places to manufacture during this time. So this could be places like Turkey and Colombia have been in conversation, as a couple to name. Businesses are also talking about running their company in a whole different country, which could be of benefit, but also there's a lot of logistics to manage in this. So the outcome for these businesses, nobody knows. But the best thing that you can do is be adaptable and keep up with what's going on. So it'll be hard times for a bit, but things are changing so rapidly, so we really just have to see what's going to happen. Trump has been bankrupt 5 times and he has always bounced back from it. In his first term, he did implement tax cuts, but it did get added to the national debt. He has been known to take shortcuts when implementing laws, which is why things get done so quickly. In times of uncertainty, be ready to be adaptable. This is why some consumers are already preparing by shopping locally, just in case there's more things that happen in this. So in summary, this all means higher costs for the consumers, maybe more manufacturing jobs, but offset by losing jobs due to company layoffs. And then there's the plan of tariffs to raise capital gains. These, I'm sure, are some hopeful dreams for the US, but at the end of the day, it's the consumer spending that matters here. If consumers are not spending, the economy can decline, and all these industries could be affected. So what we need here is not disruption, but order. So what are your thoughts and feelings on this? Feel free to leave a comment and let's start a discussion on it.